On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, Keith and I talk about the final preseason game where the Sixers improved to 4-0. What did we learn? We dive into it next right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePick. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com. Promo code Locked On.
What's up, man? Welcome to you, Keith, of course, and welcome to everybody out there. This is Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens. That's Keith Pompey. This is the Locked On 76ers podcast. Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Inquirer.com, Sixers beat reporter. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio here in Philadelphia, and we have a lot to talk about. We got to thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. Keith, what's happening, man?
What's good, brother? How you been?
Oh, man, preseason is in the books. We are a few days away from the start of the regular season. Nothing is wrong. All is good. All is good, except for the Phillies losing. But other than that, all is good.
Yeah. It's the calm before the storm, right?
Yes, it is, man. And look, we got to get to it because the Sixers are 4-0. You take something from it. You don't take something from it. We'll speak on it next here as we dive into that. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the players who we expected to play a little bit more in the preseason, maybe get a little bit more run to show what they have to finalize this roster. We have some thoughts on that and why this game may be a telltale sign for who may not make this team. And we'll dive into a little bit more later on in the final segment. But Keith, 4-0. There are some good things to see. We've talked about Tyrese Maxey quite a bit during this preseason. The first three games averaging 20 points. He finished with 9 points last night for the 76ers as they took on the Charlotte Hornets, who fell to 0-5. But they improved. They were down by as much as 11 points. They came back and won the game by 5. Maxey didn't play all that well. Embiid played in the second game of the preseason, so he got some work in, some basketball work in against a different team that's not his own. James Harden finished with 17. He had a couple of step-back jumpers mid-range, which I like to see. He also caught some catch-and-shoot three-point opportunities. Love seeing that. Also, so Keith, was there something through these 4 games? How do you take these? Do you look at these and take something from them? They're 4-0. Do we overreact to 4-0, or are we handling the right way where we're just looking at it saying, all right, a good basketball team that's supposed to be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference won the basketball game, won all 4 of them, looked okay in the games, I guess, and now we get ready for the regular season. How do you look at them through these 4 games?
I have to say incomplete. Honestly, because Joel, how many minutes did Joel play tonight?
He played 23 even.
Yeah, he played 23 minutes. Before that, my biggest concern were that they didn't have a lot of on-court time. When you look at this 76ers team and, they have a lot of new faces. If you really want to be real about it, when we talk about the rotation that they had and, tonight, it was kind of sort of like, the only person that came off the bench that was here longer than 2 years was Shake Milton, So, there's a lot of new faces that they got sprinkled in there with these guys. And, I would like to see them have played more together because, they have a gauntlet at the beginning of the season with Boston and Milwaukee. And, I'm just looking at these guys and the timing was off. So to me is a little bit incomplete. And I get it. You can't really look into it. Now, if this was the Milwaukee Bucks, if it was the Boston Celtics, teams that the core players have been together for a while, then I would say, hey, like, who cares? But to me, it was a little bit incomplete to me, and that was my biggest takeaway of that, because I think we need to see more Joel and James working well together. Something else that stood out to me, like, I didn't really see Tobias being utilized a lot. I mean, it's one thing if a guy is missing a bunch of shots, but I believe he only had 5 shots, like 4 in the first half.
Yeah.
It's like
Yep.
it was a lot of buddy ball to me. It just seemed like between 3 dudes.
Well, I think that's something that we're going to talk a lot more about, because he has to find his rhythm and find where he fits into everything with this team. But they also have to find ways to run plays for him. They don't run many plays for Tobias Harris, so have to figure that part out, because he's too important to the basketball team not to be involved in the flow of the offense and doing something for the basketball team. So need to definitely figure that out with Tobias Harris. One of the things that I learned from this team right here is that, again, what stood out to me is that Doc Rivers was really trying to figure out the back end of things. At least with the second unit, it feels like DeAnthony Melton is in there. George Niang is in there. I still believe Montrezl Harrell gets the nod before Paul Reed, and Daniel House is also in that next 4. Now, the next 3, where we go from 10, 11, and 12, I'm not quite sure where Paul Reed, Matisse Thybulle, who I thought would be in there. Also, speaking about Furkan Korkmaz, Shake Milton was in that next 5 behind the starters, where he played tonight, Keith, 10 minutes and 22 seconds. So
Yeah.
Shake is starting to get some more minutes. Doc Rivers is calling his number to see what he can bring to the table. And you mentioned him already, but that's one thing that really stood out to me. Those 4, DeAnthony Melton, Harrell, Niang, House Jr., they're in. It's everyone else trying to figure out, and that's what I know. The next 4 of those guys, Doc Rivers is trying to figure out who are the next from 10, 11, 12 that I can count on between Matisse Thybulle, Paul Reed, Shake Milton, and Furkan Korkmaz. So this is going to be something to watch over these next couple of days, and figuring out who is going to be on a part of this team. Will there be any movement, some activity before the season gets underway? I have no idea, but 4-0, incomplete is a fair way to look at it. But I also look at it and say it's not nothing that you win 4 games, because if we sat here and watched and said, all right, they lost all 4 games, or maybe 1 and 3, we would be saying, all right, how are you supposed to be a contending team, and you're taking these games, not taking them seriously enough, and you're going out there and losing them? They won them. And that's it. That this team is an okay basketball team with a lot of answers that still need to be put out there for everybody, all for Sixer fans, and even for us that cover the team in general. But one of the answers that we don't have yet, Keith, is they need to figure out a roster spot when it comes to some of their backing guys. Isaiah Joe, Charles Bassey, Julian Champagnie, who is going to be on this basketball team? Charlie Brown Jr., who's going to be on this basketball team? We'll dive into that next as we figure out who and why will be on this roster moving forward. We'll do that next right here, Locked On 76ers. So on you, man.
Let's talk about Prize Pick, right? So here's the thing. Tonight, I'm taking Luka Doncic to score more than 26.5 points. LeBron James to have more than 7.5 rebounds. Kevin Durant to have less than 6.5 assists. And Steph Curry to have more than 3.5 three-pointer made. What do you love about their games, formats? Is easy to play. What current entries do you have, right? Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will score more or less than the Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people, It's just you and the projections available. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up for your daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Don't forget the enter promo code Locked On to sign up for an instant deposit and match up to $100. Do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
Make sure you do it today, people. Basketball is back, so it's going to be a fun time, no doubt, to be able to do all those things and make those types of selections. We appreciate you checking in with us. Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast for nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you do get your podcasts. All right, Keith. No minutes tonight for Isaiah Joe. No minutes for Charles Bassey. What's going on? Where do you see those two players playing out when it comes to things shaking out over the next couple of days? Right now, Sixers do have one roster spot. If I'm correct, they have one roster spot that they have to clear. Is it one or two? I think they have
They
two.
have one. They're
They
gonna
have to
clear
clear
two.
two,
They got
right?
two to clear, but it's only really gonna be one because. And the
Right.
reason why I'm saying that is because Michael Foster, like, it's crazy. Like, I mean, you know what? They could like Michael Foster. They keep giving him a look and this and that. Like he signed an Exhibit 10 deal. You know, he's under the impression that he's going to be waived and he's going to go down to the G League, right? But they like him. They like his energy. Um, so assuming that he is waived, then it's going to come down to another player. And two guys who, well, Isaiah Joe did get some burn this preseason, just the last
Yeah.
couple of games he didn't
Yeah.
play.
Mm-hmm.
But the one guy who only played basically a quarter in 4 preseason games is Charles Bassett. Like, he had 4 points, he had 9 rebounds, he had 1 block, he had 1 steal against Brooklyn. Like, he played well. And then after that, he hasn't played. And then he subbed in. He hasn't even been really practicing. Like, seriously, he hasn't even been practicing. Like, his number hasn't been called. And they put him in on Sunday, and Doc is like raving over how good he looked at practice. So you assume that, okay, well, he's going to play Monday. You assume that he's going to play tonight, and he didn't get the number called. And sometimes you think that maybe it could be one of those things where if he's not traded, he could be the guy that's gone. If he's not included in the trade. So I don't know. And then Isaiah Joe, you look at Isaiah Joe, like, you would think that his skill set is on par, if not a little bit better than some of the dudes who played. You know what I mean? Some of them, but like, I don't know. Like, and in Sunday, I don't even think his number was called in practice on Sunday. So, Doc said tonight that it's one of those things where you look at people to see what they can do. Don't read into it. But it's hard not to read into it because those players are reading into it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I didn't get any burn. So I don't know.
Yeah, if anybody, I would still say that Isaiah Joe makes the team because of his outside shooting ability, and Charles Bassey would be the one to go. There was another move, Keith, where they brought in Skylar Mace, who has played
Yeah.
for the Indiana Pacers, and I don't know what to read into that except for as another person to get a look at for a training camp invite, even though we are wrapping things up here, getting ready for the start of the season. So
They
I would
waived them already.
they waive him. Okay, so
Yeah, what it was is, so what they have is they have,
is he in Exhibit 10?
yeah, they
Okay.
you can take up to 6 Exhibit 10s per year. So if you look at it right now, you got Michael Foster, Skylar Mays,
Mac
Pat
McClung.
McCall, Mac McClung, and then there was another dude. So I think right then and there, that's 5. So don't be surprised if they sign another dude to an Exhibit 10. And with the Exhibit 10, if you choose, the Exhibit 10 is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, but for you guys out there, if you choose to join like that G League team, you're going to get like a bonus if you stay on that team all year. So that's what teams are doing. It's like it's giving people an incentive to like once the Sixers have their rights for you to play for that team. So that's all that is.
Yeah, so it's going to be very, very interesting. And one player that we do need to talk about a little bit further as we kind of get closer to the season, we start to dive into a lot of different players on this basketball team and have predictions and all that type of stuff. Got to ask you about Jaden Springer, Keith, and what is his place on this team. We'll do that in our final one here as we talk about Jaden Springer and just get an idea of what his future is with this basketball team. Did play last night, very sparingly, but we'll talk about Jaden Springer and where his development is next, right here, Locked On 76ers. Welcome back to Locked On 76ers. Hope you enjoyed that during the break. Keith Pompey, Devon Givens here with you on the Locked On 76ers podcast. Jaden Springer, the first round pick from 2021, Keith, and still trying to figure it out. Very young player. Don't know where he will eventually be. These players need time. Drafted on the back end of the first round in the 2021 NBA draft. He played 2 minutes and 56 seconds last night, made all 4 of his free throw attempts, missed his only shot, which was a three-pointer. And yet, when we talk about all this depth on this basketball team, at the end of the season last year, in May, Doc Rivers said he believes that Springer can play in the NBA game and defend. Didn't necessarily say at a high level or anything like that. He just simply pointed out that he will be able to defend on the NBA level. But I ask you, as you've seen him in training camp through these 4 preseason games, what do you see them doing with him this season? Will he be with the team and practicing quite a bit, or do we see him back with the G League team getting a lot of run where he's able to get out there, get some work in, practice, play some meaningful games for the Blue Coats instead of being up here with the big club?
I see him going back and forth, but I see him getting a lot of his burn in the G League. Like I do, like back and forth, meaning, you know what I mean, like how they do some guys, you know, you like Shake, for instance, a second year dude. Like he was going back down there a lot. But then he would come up for games and sometimes sit the bench, you know, want to like take everything in. Um, but I just don't see. I mean, first of all, you know, whenever they do first half minutes, those are the people who are battling to be in the rotation, right? And he's normally getting in the not the third quarter, but the fourth quarter, like late in there. I mean, I just don't see him getting any minutes on the quote unquote varsity team with the Sixers. So I can see him going down to the JV, getting some burn with the Blue Coats. I just don't see him getting minutes, especially when you weren't playing them at all in the preseason that much, you know. So I think that we'll see him, and they seem to be invested in him. So I think that we'll see him playing for the Blue Coats a lot this year.
I am interested to find out. That's why I wanted to ask you that question here in our final segment, just to kind of find out who he is, what he is. Had a chance to speak to Kobe Carl, the head coach of the Delaware Bluecoats, and he talked glowingly about him. Of course, a young guy that's willing to learn, hard worker, has improved his shot with the time that he had been with both the 76ers and the G League coaching staff. So he's already gotten better. Now, are we asking too much on a first round pick on the back end? Not really, because we do see other players that were drafted around him. Herb Jones, the second round pick in that same year. He's probably going to be a starter for the New Orleans Pelicans. And we've seen other players that are later first round picks that will be in the mix. And I know he's young, and I know he's still relatively raw, where there's some things that needs to be fixed with his game. But curiosity there, not only for myself, but also a lot of Sixer fans that are interested in finding out what type of player, especially when you lack certain things on the team, what it is exactly that one player does for you that causes him to keep a first round, keep a roster spot on this team. And I understand first round pick, you keep the roster spot, but uh, what are you going to do eventually? What are you going to do with him? And this team is too deep right now for him to crack the rotation. So I do agree with you and think that it's probably going to be where there are going to be so much time on the G League team instead of being with the big club. So I agree with you. I do. Yep. And there are a few other guys that we have a lot to talk about. And we will get to those over the next few days as we preview the season, look at the roster, preview everything with these players, figure out a role. What's Tobias Harris's role? We'll dive into all of those things over the next couple of days as we lead into the Boston Celtics game on the 18th, which will be game number 1 of the NBA season. Keith, we got to thank everybody for hanging out with us. Thanks again for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022, a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combining into one ultimate NBA preview. Search for Ultimate Pro NBA Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I am on one of them where we talk about the Miami Heat, the 76ers, the Phoenix Suns, the Denver Nuggets, and the Dallas Mavericks. So I do encourage you, while Keith was so busy with training camp, I had the opportunity to represent us on that particular podcast with the other guys, and it was a bunch of fun. So I hope you can check it out. And make sure that you continue to check us out as your first listen here on Locked On 76ers. Keith, if you don't mind letting the folks know where they can find us in general, Inquirer.com, 97.5 The Fanatic, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, like D said, wherever you get your podcast at, make sure you come check us out. You know what I mean? Just do that. But also, you can follow my man D on Twitter at DivineG9775. And you also got to check out the Divine Givens show on 97.5 FM. D, what time are you on tomorrow, brother?
Tomorrow I'm on from 10:30 approximately to midnight. I'm
Oh,
all over the place. You know that.
yeah, that's why I asked. So make sure y'all listen to him. Well, what time you on Friday,
Friday I am on from 6 to 10. Yes, normal time. Normal
Okay.
time. So, yeah.
You can also follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers, and you can read me in the Philadelphia Inquirer at Inquirer.com.
Well, we appreciate you all listening. Make sure you check us out tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed this one, Keith. Have a good rest of your day, man. We'll talk to you. We'll talk tomorrow, man.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
You got it. Appreciate it.